Time shall not dim the glory of their deeds. These were the words of General John J. Pershing praising the men and women who had returned from the American Expeditionary Forces at the end of World War I. Apathy and poor record-keeping have done what time could not do. Military records are an important part of our American history, and yet they have been lost. In 1994, Major General James Craven, Air Defense Artillery, tasked his staff with compiling a list to create a display near Soldiers Hall listing all ADA recipients of the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, and the Silver Star. Hundreds of hours and 2 years later, ADA Command Historian Patricia Rhodes submitted this official Army memorandum which noted the Army does not keep a list of awards it has issued, nor does it keep a copy of citations. Moreover, there is not even a record of the number of awards issued. It's hard to believe, but the Army issues these awards and keeps no accounting of them. Even for an event as recent as Desert Storm, there is no central point of contact with a list of recipients. Ms. Rhodes then concluded by saying, compiling a complete list of awardees with citations and photos for the purpose of creating a display in Building 2 is unfortunately not feasible. The lack of a listing of the men and women who've received our military awards not only fogs history, it allows the phonies to proliferate, to pander to the public, and even to get millions of dollars in undeserved VA benefits and payments. A year ago, I was researching a Marine who was killed in Vietnam, Daniel Joseph Piotrowski. He was awarded the Silver Star, and I Googled Piotrowski Silver Star. And I found a VA pamphlet out of California with a picture of Eric Piotrowski being presented the Silver Star for his heroism in the First Gulf War. I checked him against my database and found that he was not a Silver Star recipient. And just this week, out in California, Mr. Piotrowski, a former cop, pled guilty under the Stolen Valor Act. While a dead Marine is forgotten to history, save for the family that loves and remembers him, a brazen impostor who's never heard a shot fired in anger has heaped praise and glory upon himself until he was caught. When George Washington established our military award system on August 7, 1782, he set forth 4 criteria. He said, before this favor, an award, can be conferred, the particular fact or facts on which it is based must be set forth to the commander vetting the award. Gallant men who have been thus designated will on all occasions be treated with particular confidence and consideration. We honor our heroes. The name and regiment of the person with the action so certified are to be entered into the Book of Merit, which will be kept at the orderly office. And finally, he said, should any who are not entitled to these honors have the insolence to assume the badges of them, they shall be severely punished. The Stolen Valor Act, which was passed in 2006 and signed by the United States President, addressed the issue of those who assume the badges of men of honor and women who have received these awards as well. In more than 50 cases to date, we've not lost a single case. Everyone has resulted in either a guilty verdict or a guilty plea. Mary Shontag of the POW Network reports that in the last year alone, Stolen Valor reports have put the spotlight on $5 million in VA fraud. Last year in Seattle, 8 men who had accounted for $1.4 million in VA fraud were charged. All of them had claimed combat wounds or combat stressors when in fact none of the 8 had ever served in combat. 2 had never even been in the military. In Texas, where Legion of Valor license plates have special privileges for the recipient, we found that as many as 14 of 67 issued plates went to people who did not receive the awards designated by them. A Chicago Tribune article recently found that a third of the listing of who's who falsely claimed high military awards, and that in 80% of published obituaries, medals that were not earned are either falsely claimed or erroneously reported. Last year, the United States House of Representatives voted to name a post office in Las Vegas for a D-Day hero who got a Silver Star, and was very embarrassed to subsequently learn that his story, which was vetted in the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, was false. He was nowhere near Normandy during the D-Day invasion. I welcome the launching of AMVET's new ReportStolenValor.org program. This is an important part of fighting this prevalent issue. This problem is so large that it demands a teamwork effort, and it calls upon all veterans to honor the memory of our real heroes by finding the fakes and enforcing the law. But enforcement of the Stolen Valor Act is just a part of the problem that we need to face. Remember, George Washington said that the name and regiment of the person with the actions so certified are to be entered into the book of military merit. When my wife and I wrote the Stolen Valor Act back in 2004 and pushed it through Congress in the following 2 years, it was part one of 2 parts of legislation. The first was to deal with the phonies. Part 2 is to address the lack of record keeping so that our real heroes are never forgotten. That current legislation, the Military Valor Roll of Honor Act, H.R. 666, is currently before Congress, although only 48 members of Congress have so far signed on as co-sponsors. While some of the reluctance in Congress is pure apathy, no doubt progress on this legislation is stalled because of a report that was submitted by the Department of Defense earlier this year. The Department of Defense noted, among other things, that 1, because there is a database of Medal of Honor recipients, no other database is needed. 2, that such a database of those who have received military awards would actually increase the number of frauds because it would enable people with common names to point to a citation and say, well, that's me. They also said that such a database would be unachievable because of the fire in St. Louis in 1973 that damaged or destroyed 18 million records. I have refuted every one of these and other points raised by the Department of Defense, and in fact have spent the last 15 years doing exactly what the Department of Defense says cannot be done, creating a database that now contains the names of more than 120 of the 150,000 men and women who have received Silver Stars and higher. The Department of Defense says for a database to be functional, it must be 95% complete. I would challenge them to find the database that is now maintained by Military Times at www.militarytimes.com/Hall of Valor is not 99% complete. In fact, how complete is it? Army Awards Branch shows that a total of 848 Distinguished Service Crosses were awarded in the Vietnam War. The Military Times database contains the citations for 1,061. They have found more than 200 of the most decorated men of the Vietnam War, men who have otherwise been lost to history. I have estimated creating a database of all the men and women who have received any military award in history would cost between $8 and $10 million. Just twice the amount of fraud that's been uncovered in last year alone. Just 2 months ago, I was watching the MSNBC special on Afghanistan, Tip of the Spear, and in that, Richard Engel profiled an Army Sergeant, John Penich, in Afghanistan. Sergeant Penich was highly regarded, highly respected, and Richard Engel went on to report that Richard Penich was killed in action on October 16, 2008. After seeing that report, I went to my computer and I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to St. Louis to get Sergeant Penich's records. 4 weeks later, I got this. Sergeant Penich's records show his awards: Parachutist Badge, Combat Infantry Badge, NATO Medal, Purple Heart, Good Conduct Medal. No record of his Silver Star in St. Louis. And this is not an isolated case. In 24 Freedom of Information Act requests submitted on individuals who got posthumous Silver Stars in the global war on terrorism, 22 came back showing no record of their Silver Star. 2 years ago, the Baltimore Sun tried to get all of the Silver Star citations for the global war on terrorism, and they reported, and I quote, "The Army denied a March 2006 Freedom of Information Act request for the narratives, first on the grounds that it could not find them all." I'd rather have a dozen phonies unduly honored than one true hero lost to history.